Hey everyone in the Viera Book Club. Thank you so much for spending time with me tonight and sending questions and above all reading How to Catch a Prince. It's great to be here with you tonight even though it's by video. And I hope that you guys are relaxed and have some great snacks. If not, hit one of those great Viera restaurants when the meeting is over. It's always a good thing to do. So I thought I would just jump right into your questions. And along the way, I'm sure I'll expound and tell a bunch of stories and probably give you some long-winded answers. But that's the fun part of doing it by video, right? You can't stop me. All right. And I'm sitting in the kitchen of my home. I have an office upstairs, but I thought I'd hang out in the kitchen and talk to you guys tonight because that seems like a cozy place to be. So we'll get started. When writing a series, this is the first question, do you outline the whole story series first then decide where to break into individual books, or do you write one book first with the others in mind but not set in stone? I've written about 5 series and only 2 of them were planned. So I like to focus on one book at a time, and I tell this to new authors. Write one book at a time. Don't think about the series, because I think sometimes it causes an author to weaken the first book. So they have some great plot point and they think, wow, I'm going to put that in book 2, but book 1 really needs it, you know? And so I say, write the best first book you can. And out of that, you usually discover characters or a storyline or happen upon something that you think, oh, this would make a great second book. That happened to me with the Low Country series with the book Sweet Caroline. She had a best friend named Elle, and that woman was hilarious. And I said, you know what? She's going to make a great second book. And so when I did rewrites and some editing and tweaking before the final book came out, I adjusted some of her storyline to make what I thought would be a good setup for her own book. And that book is called Love Starts with L, and she made a great heroine. It was a book that got me a Reader nomination and got a little bit of acclaim for me. It's kind of one of the first books that I wrote that people said, hey, wait a second, this girl might be kind of good. So I love Elle. But with the Sarah Evans books I wrote, the Songbird novels, that was a planned series with the heroine as the continuing character throughout all the books. That was the first time I tried that, and I really enjoyed it because I knew the character so well. And then when I came up with the Royal Wedding series, I knew that I was going to write 3 books about prince and princesses. I got the idea when Prince William married Kate Middleton, and I thought, wow, these 2 are going to be popular again. They're going to be back on the cover of magazines. They're going to have children. Royal mania and fascination is going to resurge in America. Why don't I try to tap into that? And I'm glad I did. It was a lot of fun. I learned a lot about the royal family and European royals and the history of Europe and the royal families. So it was interesting and fascinating for me. So I just tried to keep the broad stories in mind as I was writing book 1, Once Upon a Prince, which is Susanna and Prince Nathaniel, who becomes King Nathaniel, and you met him in How to Catch a Prince. That's their story in Once Upon a Prince, which is the first book in the series. And the second one is Princess Ever After, which is about Regina, a Tallahassee lassie who restores classic cars and learns she's a long-lost princess of the Grand Duchy or Duchy of Hessenberg. So I tried to outline all of the stories when I sent the proposal to the publisher. So for this series, I actually had something loose in mind. I don't think you can set anything in stone because you just don't know how the stories are going to unfold and what you're going to discover along the way. But having that kind of overall umbrella, knowing what you're going to do as the series continues, does help you kind of give you that big picture, stand back and look at it like this. But I love discovering the story, and I think it makes it feel more real to write to the moment. So I came up with this series idea 4 years ago. It's hard to believe. So a lot would change. I knew that a lot would change on the social landscape, in our history in the last 4 years as a country, in the royal history. Look, they're about to have their second child. So I keep things loose and try to write the best possible book right now. So I put all the great things that I can think of in the book that I'm writing, and I know I'll think of other things with the help of the Lord for the other books in the series. So I hope that helps with that answer. This is the second question. This is the first book of the series that the Viera Book Club has read. Thank you guys very much. Are the first 2 books about Karina and Prince Stephen's courtship and marriage? No, they're about Stephen's brother, Nathaniel, that's book 1, and then another character, Regina, is book 2. That's a really great question, too, because I know you've jumped into their relationship already in progress, but I liked unfolding it that way. I liked the idea of a prince marrying in secret and what ramifications that could have. That doesn't typically happen, so I wanted to look at that. Since the title, How to Catch a Prince, kind of implied a chase, and that was my original idea, that maybe the heroine, Karina, was going to chase him all over the country or all over the world, but that just became logistically difficult. And I thought, man, there's just no way that the royal family would let him do that. And anything else that I could come up with felt kind of cliche. And I didn't want to do a reality show, a prince on a reality show. That just seemed kind of beneath their dignity. So, and Karina was going to be a deputy sheriff, believe it or not. So she's changed a lot over the course of 4 years. So I just kind of jumped into their relationship. And I thought that was different, since in the other 2 books, the hero and the heroine met brand new and learned about each other and discovered each other and fell in love. And I thought, man, what if they're already in love? In fact, what if they're already married? Ooh, that could be kind of fun. So that's how I started that book. And I don't think writing about their relationship now, like a prequel, like a little novella or something, would be very interesting, since we already know what happens in their relationship. So, but read book 1 and 2. I think that you guys would probably enjoy them if you enjoyed this one. All right, thank you for that question. All right, here's question 3. Let's say book 3. Woo! There have been many arguments against a marriage annulment. You chose not to go down that rabbit trail. Is it difficult to keep focused on moving the story forward and not putting a lot of your opinion into your writing? Wow, I really consider the job of the author is to write about characters that are real and authentic to the story and to the world and the life that you've created for them within the story. Of course, my experience and my belief system is going to shadow the story or come into the story, help steer the story. Of course it does, and it should, but I never want to write what we call agenda fiction. I'm never out to say, hey, I have this social issue on my heart, or I'm on this soapbox, so I'm going to write a story and I'm going to, get people to my side, or I'm going to show them the evils or the goods of this or that. My idea is to create characters and throw stuff at them to make their life difficult, put them in tight situations where they have to get out of it, deal with the hidden issues of their heart. We have, at My Book Therapy, a writing website that I'm a part of, we talk about the dark moment story. And that causes a wound in their past, which recreates a lie and a fear. And that's really what the story is about. Dealing with that wound of the past, writing the lie towards truth and overcoming the fear. And there's some secret desire in their heart that longs to overcome that fear, that longs for truth, that longs for righteousness, that longs to not be wounded anymore. And that's just really true to the human experience. So that's what I try to develop with each character. And then the journey of the story is about overcoming that wound, lie, and fear. So once I develop that, my opinion doesn't really even matter that much. What I try to do is take universal truth and stick it in the mouths of the characters and stick it into the lives of the characters. So with the marriage annulment in this book, they were together such a short time, and Stephen was so wounded and had PTSD and survivor's guilt. It just made sense to me that he would consider, let's just end this. Let's just annul. Let's just forget it didn't happen. We didn't tell anybody. But I also felt it was important to show that he really loved her and he wasn't just marrying her to have a couple of honeymoon nights, if you know what I mean. So, marriage and annulments and divorce is difficult, especially within the church. We all know what Jesus says about it, but we all know Jesus says that the heart is hard and the heart is wicked. And at this point, I think Stephen's heart was hard because he was so wounded. So with other issues, I try to really argue what I think the character would say. In Sweet By and By, one of the Songbird novels that I wrote with Sarah Evans, the heroine Jade had an abortion when she was 16. And I actually have that scene of her going into the clinic and getting on the table in the book. And her mom is this kind of wild hippie chick, and she's forcing her to do this because she's painting a very bleak picture of being a single mom, even in the middle 90s when she was 16 having the abortion. It would be hard for a single mom, and I think the mother didn't want to be a party to any of that responsibility either. So Jade goes and has the abortion, and then later in the book, the two of them argue it out. Jade tells how she feels about the abortion, and I argue, the pro-life, anti-abortion argument from Jade, full bore. I give it everything I've got, but when the mother responds, I give it everything she's got. She's pro-choice. She feels like Jade made the right decision. She was doing the best she could at the time. All of the arguments that come from those who advocate abortion, though I'm pro-life, and I advocate adoption and other alternatives than abortion, I felt like for the mother, I really had to argue her case. And so it was up to the reader to decide which side they fell on. And I feel like that's my job as an author, to really, really show truth. When it comes to the spiritual thread of the story, like who God is, who Jesus is as Redeemer, the elements of heaven and the supernatural, I like to write a supernatural thread because I feel like I can show heaven invading earth, because every day some aspect of heaven must be invading earth, because that's who God is. He's good. And we know that we have angels watching us all the time. Angels unaware. We're unaware of the angels. There are angels who watch. We know that angels encounter people. We see that in the Old Testament. We see that in the New Testament. So I like to kind of put that in physical form within my stories, which is why you met Adelaide and Brill in How to Catch a Prince. So that's the only thing I try to be, wow, this is true, and I'm not going to put any other alternatives in it. Jesus Christ is the way, the truth, and the life. No man comes to the Father but by him. So any spiritual thread is going to be rooted in that. But I may have a character who says, well, that's, hockey puck. No way, man. Jesus isn't the only way. What about this guy and this religion and that religion? But my characters will respond in truth. So, but I would never set up that scenario if it wasn't true to the story. It's all about the story. It is never about my opinion. And Jesus was a great storyteller. I love in Matthew 15, in Luke 18, In Luke 18, the parable of the persistent widow, you've all read it. Jesus says, I'm going to tell you a story to show you how you need to persist in prayer. And I thought, wow, that's just fantastic. Story can show us good behavior in life and bad behavior in life. It can help us formulate our arguments. So in that sense, I feel a lot of responsibility to the story to be true and authentic and show, at the end of the day, the reader hope and truth and light. And so that's really my goal when I write. If I start with an opinion, I'm going to have a weak story. You can never start with an opinion or an agenda. And I've read those books, and I've helped authors who wanted to take their life passion and put it in story and be like Jesus. I want to write a story to show how, women were abused, or to show how to treat children, or show the beauty of adoption, or whatever it is that you have on your heart. But when you start with that and your message leads, then the message kind of overshadows the story, and nothing feels authentic. You have to actually look at the underside of your issue, the belly of it or the top of it, and see, how do other people perceive this issue, and weave that into the whole mix of characterization, dialogue, setting, action, just moving the plot forward. So it can be kind of complicated, but I feel like the best story is when I create characters who have a life journey, and that goes back to my dark wound, lie, and fear, and then I always contrast that with a secret desire, and that secret desire is the thing that's going to make them face their fears and their wounds. So, does that make sense? And you got a mini writing lesson in there, or at least how I write. This is question number 4. I know you are an American Christian Fiction Writers member. How has being a part of this group benefited your writing? Well, what a great question. I am on the board of American Christian Fiction Writers. I have been on the board in one way, shape, or form since 2002. I cannot say enough about this organization. It has made me part of the writer that I am today. It's played a huge role. It was through ACFW that I met other writers. And through the writers, I met my agent. I've learned the craft. I've met other authors. I met my writing partner, Susie Mae Warren, through ACFW. She's been a huge component to my career and learning the craft, a big support system to me, my best girlfriend. So ACFW has just been a phenomenal part of my writing career. I would say it's home for my writing. I lead worship there every year at the national conference, which is every September. If you guys are interested and anybody wants to write, go to www.acfw.com, click on the conference tab and check it out. Yeah, I don't know what I would do without ACFW, to tell you the truth. And Romance Writers of America has been a big part of my writing career because we have a local chapter here in Brevard County called STAR, and love the writers there. Have learned a great deal of the craft of writing and had a lot of support from RWA here in Brevard County. So organizations make a difference because writing, like everything else, is about network. Sometimes it's who you know. There's a lot of great writers out there, I'm sure way better than I am, but they're writing in that solitude, which we all have to write in, but maybe they're an introvert, super introverted, maybe they don't have the resources, maybe they're a busy mom writing in between naps, and they don't have any connections, and their story doesn't get the input and the insight that it needs. It doesn't get the looks that it needs to get published, but going to ACFW or even joining RWA, getting that feedback really can make a difference in a writer's life. So I really recommend that. Or My Book Therapy, mybookTherapy.com. They have a couple of retreats every year where we teach craft. We have a Thursday night chat where we teach craft, and all of that actually came out of ACFW as well. And I've learned a lot through My Book Therapy. I'm actually one of the therapists there. I actually teach writing there. I'm on the Thursday night chat, and we have a whole group of up-and-coming authors who come to the chats and learn. So, if you're interested in writing, I just really recommend these organizations to help you get to the next level and help you to meet people and help you to form relationships and friendships. All right, thank you for that question. Here's number 5. What books have you read in the past year? What is your favorite book that you have written? Wow, the books that I've read in the past year. I've read quite a few. I will confess this to you guys. Since becoming a writer, I'm a horrible reader. One, if I'm writing on deadline, by the time I'm done, I'm sick of words. I don't want any more words. So what I do try to do is read a little bit in the morning before I start writing, just to kind of like grease the skids, so to speak, and kind of get my creative juices flowing. But afterwards, going to bed, I just can't. Sometimes I listen to a book on tape, or I guess we don't listen to books on tape anymore. I listen to an audiobook. There you go. I listen to an audiobook, kind of have somebody read me a story as I go to sleep. But it's really hard to read, but it's important to read. Writers need to read. We need to keep up with this craft, keep up with the voices and the styles that are popular today. The way we rewrite today wouldn't have flown in Dickinson's era or even Austen's era, but that their writing today doesn't fly as well either. It'd take a very skilled and talented author to write with an Austen voice or a Dickens voice. But we can still tell the same kind of great stories. We just have to do it in a more clipped and short tone. We just have to have a different kind of sentence structure, believe it or not. One of the books that I read in the past year was not a Christian novel, but it was called 100 Summers by an author named Beatrice Williams. I don't widely recommend it because I'm very careful about reading sensual content, and this has a couple of sensual scenes, and not the bodice ripper, describing it all scenes, if you know what I mean. Not like that, but it does have some sensual scenes that I wasn't aware the book had when I downloaded it, but it's set in the 30s, which I absolutely loved. It was dual timeline, 31 and 38, which I absolutely love. The Wedding Dress has a dual timeline, one of my books. The Princess Ever After has a little bit of a dual timeline with diary entries from her great-grandmother. So I really like that story. I have a book coming out in November called The Wedding Chapel that has dual timelines. So that's really fascinating to me, which is one of the reasons why I read it. But the author's voice was just phenomenal. Her writing style, the way she told the story, just everything about it just wowed me. And I'm very hard to be wowed. So that was a really great book for me. And I just give you that caveat of there's a couple of sensual scenes. And I really try to walk with honor before the Lord in what I read. You know, it's funny, you guys, that our husbands should be, and probably are, watching what they look at on the internet, right? My husband has some kind of canine, some kind of, guard. One of those things where he doesn't happen upon something that he doesn't want to see, that may take him to a place he doesn't want to go and tempt him in areas he doesn't want to be tempted. And so I figure if he's setting those boundaries, I need to set those boundaries as well. And looking at things on the internet is not a temptation to me, but reading them in a novel can take me to places where I don't want to go. And sometimes I have to read those novels, more sensual content and straight up sexual content, because I judge for various contests. And I just have to be super careful. And because for me, it's honor before the Lord, and just watching my eye gates, so to speak, and watching what I take into my heart. For women, it's what we feel, right? And reading is a way for us to have sexual content put into us the way that men have it visually. So I just say that with a caveat about 100 Summers. Beatrice Williams, I loved her writing so much, but some of her other books were just too sexual and too sensual for me, so I haven't read any of them. But I was inspired as a writer. I appreciated her abilities very, very much. For my own favorite books, what have I written? Of the ones I've written, I think everyone is a favorite at some level. It's like your kid. You go through phases where you probably like one kid a little bit more than the other, although I'll let that be between us. I don't have children, so I never had to make that choice. But I'm sure there would be seasons where you're just connecting with one kid more than the other, and it's the same with a book. My earlier books, I'm proud of them because that's what got me started, but whoa, my writing craft and how I put together a story was so immature and with much less ability than I have now. But at the same time, there's a certain kind of heart and freedom and creativity those books have that I have to be careful of squashing in my current books because I'm so craft oriented. Like, that wound, life, fear journey. Well, what's that for every character? And I've got to put in this element and that element. I've got to have all these stepping stones. And you can create a formula where there's no life to the story. So I work really hard at trying to let the story breathe while using the best craft elements I can, because the more you craft and the more you know where the story is going, actually the quicker you can write. And where I'm sitting, writing fast is good because it means the books can come out faster, I can keep the readers interested, I can keep gaining readers, and it kind of helps with your financial returns. So, if I was a super big author like John Grisham, you can only write a book once a year and make lots of money. But I'm not in that position yet. hoping, praying. So, so that's to say that I like all the books. I really like The Wedding Dress, and The Wedding Dress has done really well for me, and I know it's a favorite of a lot of readers. So I have a kind of a soft spot in my heart for that book. I loved all of the royal books. I loved them all. They were super fun to write. I just thought it was super fun. I'm 54 years old, and I loved the idea of pretending maybe I could be a princess. And Regina in book 2 lives in Tallahassee, and I lived in Tallahassee for 7 years, and there were elements of her story where I felt like, this is me. I am a princess. I can be a princess. And in the Lord, of course, we all can be princesses. But I loved these stories. Softly and Tenderly, which was the second book in the Songbird novels with Sarah Evans, that one has just always stood out to me. I've read it myself several times. I've listened to the audio version several times. There's just something very touching about that story. I love all of the characters. So, I don't know, sometimes something just stands out to you and there's nothing you can really do about it. It's just something that you love. How to Catch a Prince is special to me. I don't know if it's my favorite, but last year when I was writing it, I had a really severe run-in with menopause. And so I wrote that book feeling physically like, and the Lord just really, really got me through it. And at first I didn't know what was happening. And then I went to my doctor and she did the blood work and called me and said, oh, Rachel, you're not crazy. You're super menopausal. And I'm like, what? So I just kind of walked that through while I was writing this book and writing a novella called A Brush with Love, and can just really testify to the Lord's creativity and the Lord's grace and mercy. When I wasn't sleeping, wasn't feeling good, felt about as creative as a rock. So I think How to Catch a Prince is special to me for that reason. And if you guys have read the acknowledgments, you'll know how I felt about it even writing the acknowledgments. I felt cracked. I felt like the book was cracked. But somehow it came together. So that book to me is a representation of just God's goodness. Because there were times when I would be awake at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning and thinking, all right, I'm going to quit. I don't want to ever write again. I don't know if I can ever write again. I just was so kind of outside myself emotionally. And I would say, you know what, tomorrow morning you're going to call your publisher and tell her, you're out, you're done. Just, I'll pay back whatever money I have to pay back. I'll get a job at McDonald's. I don't know, but I'm done. But I wouldn't have any peace with that. Then finally I said, you know what, I'm just going to have to walk through this. And I had this little glimmer of light, this little glimmer of peace. And that's when I knew, you know what, God, you're not going to bail me out. I'm just going to have to walk through this. But you are with me. And looking back now, 14 months later, 15 months later, it wasn't that long of a stretch. The hardest part of it was probably about 4 or 5 weeks. And then a couple months of ups and downs. But in the vast scheme of things, wasn't that traumatic, But boy, it was really intense when I was there. And I just really felt the Lord was with me and just saying, walk through it. Just walk through it. So if you're in a place of trial and struggle, just lean into the Lord. Break out your favorite praise and worship and just go for it. Find a scripture verse that really meets the need of your heart, that, you're not feeling that God is your rock, but find that God is your rock verse and go, you're my rock. Sing it, say it, pray it. Just chew on it all day long. And I can guarantee you that he'll meet you in that place. So there you go. How's that? Long-winded answer. Question number 6. What got you interested in writing about royals, and who's your favorite royal and why? Well, I've already mentioned that it was Prince William, Mary, and Kate Middleton. And I just, again, thought, wow, people are going to be fascinated because Kate was incredibly composed and poised and confident. I just thought, she's marrying on a world stage. She wasn't raised with this. She's just a private girl, close to her family, meets a prince, and suddenly a billion people are watching her wedding. I can't even imagine, you guys, like walking down the aisle with 300 people at my wedding made me nervous. I can't imagine an abbey full of people, the whole expectation, the royal family marrying into the top family of the whole United Kingdom, which is like 30, 40 countries, maybe more, and having the whole world watching at some level. I'm like, that is really kind of nerve-wracking. So I just was really impressed with her. So I think that she would probably be my favorite royal, is Kate. And I like Harry, and I like William. I think they're good guys. I think they try to be good guys. I pray for them, because even though they seemingly don't have any authority, they don't have any rule, they have to partner with Parliament, and Parliament has to approve everything, they have a voice. They can remind people who England was, and that they're a Christian nation. And I think even recently David Cameron, their prime minister, said that. So I pray for them, and I pray for little Prince George, that he would know Jesus, and that they would be used to help turn the nations back to him. So I think they're important. I don't think they're throwaway, and so I like the British royal family pretty much. Question number 7. What made you decide to have angels in your story? Well, that's a good question. I think I just kind of stumbled upon it as I was writing the story. I mentioned already that I always have some kind of little supernatural thread. I have a kind of a crazy homeless character in Once Upon a Prince, the first book in the series. And her name's Aurora. And she's a human, but she's kind of otherworldly. She has encounters with the Lord and encounters with angels, and she just kind of like is so free in God. She doesn't care about herself. She lives in a tent. She lives like a homeless person, even though she's rich. And so it's like she allowed herself to be cracked for God. And so when I was writing this story, I just thought, let's bring angels in. Angels are hard to write because we don't know that much about them. And they're servants of the Lord. They're not humans. And humans don't become angels. We become, perfected humans. Jesus is a perfected human. He's holy God and holy man for all of eternity. So a human man and holy God sits at the right hand of God the Father making intercession for us. So there's this blending of heaven and earth that I love to show in Jesus himself. So he took on the form of flesh, man, to represent heaven in the human form. So, wow. So when I decided to put angels in the story, I thought, well, why don't I create angels who are there to help the kingdom of Brighton, or Brighton Kingdom, and help Karina discover who she's supposed to be. So that's kind of how I decided to put them into the story. And if any of you have ever watched the movie Brigadoon, I got the idea of them appearing only when they were needed from that movie. You remember Brigadoon is a town in Scotland, I think, where it only appears every 100 years. And you get trapped in it or trapped outside of it in the span. It's been a while since I've seen it, but in the span that it exists, that it's visible. And Gene Kelly comes and falls in love with a dancer that her name has escaped me. I know you guys are all saying it. Anyway, so I kind of got the idea of the manor appearing only when it was needed. So it kind of appears in King Stephen I and Queen Magdalene's time, or Magdalena's time, and then it appears again when Karina and Stephen need it. So that was just me trying to be creative, trying to come up with stuff. So that's kind of the crux of the story. I hope that you guys enjoyed it. Maybe check out the other ones in the series. It's a great fun to be an author. I love what I do. It's what I've wanted to do since I was a little kid. And it's an honor to be with you guys. And I hope maybe I get to meet you guys in person sometime. So have a great night and enjoy those great snacks.